Welcome to Storied, the untold Jewish stories behind your favorite music. Season 1, The Beatles. This project started off as a live show created in partnership with the Berman Theater at the J Detroit, and has grown exponentially since then, including shows about other bands and other genres. Now we're doing this podcast where in each episode we're going to dive deep into the history and the legacy of most of our favorite band, and that is the Beatles, focusing on where Jews and the Jewish community contributed and collaborated to their stardom. Each episode begins with a recording from our live show telling a quick and high-level version of the story, followed by this episode, this deep dive really getting into it, as I interview some really special guests. It's no secret Jewish events today can be appropriately hard. We have some serious issues that we're grappling with as a community, and they often require a box of tissues and a therapy appointment afterwards. The Storied live show was conceived and developed at the J in Detroit in partnership with the Berman Theater, not as the answer to this problem, but as an answer to this problem. We are focused on a positive narrative, Jewish joy, and reminding people about the great contributions made by the Jewish community. We're excited to see Storied grow with this podcast and many more live shows. Now, you may be here because you're a Beatles fan, or you may be here because you're looking for positive Jewish content. In either case, our intent is for all of your delight, and I think you're going to get there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you see this awesome Storied shirt that I'm wearing, and it was designed and made by a sponsor of the show, Yonatees. Now, Yonatees makes awesome custom merch and some really great Jewish-themed merch, like the ones you're seeing popping up on the screen here. If you're listening on an audio feed, pop over to YouTube just to see what I'm showing you, because it's worth it, and I think you're going to like it. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, we would love to talk to you. Check out the links in the story notes, including our website, www.storied.show, for more information about who we are, what we do, the other bands and genres we've covered, or how we can bring this live show to your city. If you like what we've done here, please leave us a review and maybe some stars. If you have any questions, hit us up on our socials. We'd love to hear from you. All the links, again, are in the show notes. And with that, let's get this show on the long and winding road. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 13 of Storied, the untold Jewish stories behind your favorite music, and we are in for a treat today. Today is going to be a little bit of a unique episode because I'm not interviewing somebody, I'm interviewing two people, and those two people are Rabbi Susan Silverman and her daughter Hallel Silverman. Another anomaly with today's episode is, while there is a little bit of Beatles content, we're really not talking about the Beatles as much as we're talking about Rabbi Avraham Feinberg, who the story is about, as well as Rabbi Susan and Hallel, and how they are really qualified to talk about Rabbi Feinberg and what he was all about, his ethos and what he would be doing today, and how they're sort of moving his movement forward, moving his passions, his ideals forward. So, Rabbi Avraham Feinberg was the Reform rabbi known as the Red Rabbi. He was a civil rights activist who was a friend of John Lennon's and helped him write the song Give Peace a Chance. He worked hard to make the world a better place, and a lot of the pushback that he got mirrors the hard work that's happening today and the pushback that Jews are getting today. It's fascinating. Rabbi Susan and Hallel are probably the most qualified people to be talking about Rabbi Feinberg and his work. Let me tell you who they are for a second. So Rabbi Susan is the author of a book called Casting Lots, Creating a Family in a Beautiful, Broken World. She's an advocate for adoption, and this really comes from her lived experience and her ability to adopt and grow a family and counsel other people in how to do the same. She's written for My Jewish Learning. She founded Second Nature. She also founded Just Adopt, which supports the pathway for fostering adoption for children. One of the things that she's most famous for is being a part of the organization Women of the Wall, which is a group that has women who pray at the Western Wall in the same way, egalitarian, that men are able to do so. And her daughter, about 15 years ago, got arrested in Jerusalem at the Temple Mount for praying at the Western Wall the way that the Women of the Wall wanted to. It's a wild and fascinating story, and that really put Hallel on a path towards advocacy. Now you see why I say that they're the perfect people to be talking about Rabbi Feinberg. Hallel also is an advocate in her own right and is a writer for the Times of Israel. She's a writer for the Jerusalem Post, and she has been advocating around the globe for the last 15 years. The conversation today is pretty interesting. I found it fascinating. I hope you do too. We talk about liberal values. We talk about liberal Zionism. We talk about liberal values and liberal Zionism in a world where liberals are anti-Zionist. It's interesting whether you're a liberal or you're conservative. I'm really grateful that they took the time to have this conversation with me, and I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you appreciate. And if you don't enjoy it, give peace and this podcast a chance.
In the late 1960s, as the Vietnam War raged on and the world cried out for peace, an unlikely figure emerged as a champion of the cause, and that was Rabbi Avraham Feinberg. Born in the United States, educated at Hebrew Union College, Feinberg began his career as a rabbi in various American citizens before settling in Canada, where he became a prominent voice for social justice and a fierce critic of the war. Feinberg's activism brought him both praise and condemnation. His anti-war speeches were often met with heckling and death threats. There was a pamphlet titled The Red Rabbi accusing him of being a communist. But Feinberg remained undeterred, driven by his belief of the prophetic values of Reform Judaism and the concept of tikkun olam, or repairing the world. In January of 1967, Feinberg embarked on a remarkable journey to Hanoi, where he met with North Vietnamese leader Ho Chi Minh, part of a peace mission. Joined by a Presbyterian minister and a South African Anglican bishop, this was just the first time Feinberg advocated for a better world. In 1969, Eldridge Cleaver of the Black Panthers visited Algeria and declared his support for the PLO. In a letter to the editor of the Black Panther, published on the 9th of August 1969, Feinberg identified himself as a Jew, a rabbi, and a Panther supporter. He expressed his dismay at Cleaver's pro-Palestinian remarks. Feinberg asked for the Black Panthers to disassociate with themselves from the PLO, which he described as a group committed to ending Israel via violence and to driving millions of Jews out of Israel. No reply to Feinberg's letter was ever given, and the Black Panthers continued to take a very anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian line, depicting the PLO as heroic freedom fighters engaged in the same struggle as the Panthers. History is sadly repeating itself today, with many of the Jewish liberals feeling betrayed and abandoned and overlooked by the very people that we've supported for many years. They turn their back on us with this current war with Hamas. On June 1st of 1969, in their room at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, Lennon and Ono recorded Give Peace a Chance alongside a chorus of their friends. Feinberg served as one of the backup singers, making up the chorus, Give Peace a Chance, and even suggested changes to the lyrics that were incorporated by John Lennon. Other people in that chorus included Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg, Tom Summers, Derek Taylor, and many others. Feinberg's presence at the bed-in wasn't just a celebrity cameo. The two worked together on several projects throughout 1969. Feinberg's friendship with Lennon even inspired him to resume his own singing career, releasing an album titled I Was So Much Older Then, and a recording of the duet Give Peace a Chance with John later on. The story of Rabbi Avraham Feinberg is one of courage, conviction, and the power of music, to bring people together in the name of a long-lasting actual peace for Jews and Gentiles across the entire globe. Let's clap for that. Now, the band is going to play the song Give Peace a Chance, and I hope you guys sing along. And I hope you guys stand up and you clap and you cheer and you participate. And when you sing along, I hope that you know that this is not an miseducated, popular virtue signal for ceasefire. This is a call for peace for everybody, that everybody can live together. This is Rabbi Feinberg's dream of a planet that's safe for Jews and safe for Arabs and safe for brown people and black people and immigrants in the LGBTQ community and every person in between. With that, let's give peace a chance.
Hey, before we get to this interview, I want to take a moment and thank our new sponsor, Tequila Kosher Spirits. And they make the kosher tequila that I am seeing popping up around Detroit. And if you know me personally, or if you follow my social media, you'll know that I'm sober and I don't drink. But when I go to different Jewish events and I hear this topic come up, everybody has really great things to say about it. So I'm excited that Tequila reached out and said that they wanted to sponsor the podcast. Every special Chaim deserves a special spirit, but finding high quality kosher spirits is near impossible. Until now. So we're introducing Tequila Kosher Tequila, the world's first Jewish-inspired tequila, celebrating culture, community, and tradition. Tequila is 100% kosher and 100% additive-free. Check it out at buy.tequilaspirits.com for a smooth tequila blanco and bold tequila reposado. Tequila, l'chaim like you mean it. The link is in the show notes. Now let's hear this interview. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of Storied, the podcast, season 1. We're talking about the Beatles, and this is a very cool and interesting episode, as you heard in the intro, because we have two people here. Every other episode has just been one person. Today, we've got two people. We've got Susan Silverman and her daughter, Hallel, and welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Susan, can we start with you? Tell us about your love of the Beatles and growing up as a Beatles fan, and tell us about that.
So, I mean, who doesn't love the Beatles? Is there anybody who doesn't love the Beatles?
I mean, nobody's perfect. There are a few people who.
That's my age. I mean, I grew up, I was coming of age in the 70s and 80s, and the Beatles were everywhere. And, a lot of the music that I was raised with, including the Beatles, was very social justice-y. And not all the Beatles stuff is social justice-y, but some of it is, right? And I've always been so inspired by music that's sort of social justice focused, love focused. It just it meant the world to me growing up.
Well, you hit the nail on the head on where I was going next. Did you play music in your house growing up? How did you grow up around music?
Yeah, I mean, she definitely passed down some of those classics, like social justice, energy, old school vibes.
What are your musical favorites?
From that, I mean, Give Peace a Chance is definitely a classic, but I'm not even sure. I think my sisters were more into it than me, but I loved the whole energy. It was always music had a meaning.
Outside the Beatles, what are your favorites?
Well, I like Israeli music a lot. They're great Israeli singers, Yasmin Moalem. But also I find in Israeli music, we have a lot of meaning that sometimes lacks nowadays in Western music. It's not just about material things and drugs and all that. In Israel, even rap has deeper meaning. It's war and loss. And I very much connect to that growing up in Israel.
Amazing. I get made fun of by my cousins in Israel because my favorite Israeli band is Kaveret. And they're like, that's goofy stuff from the 60s. And I'm like, but it was awesome. So Sipere Pugi is amazing. I'd still listen to that album all the time.
Sipere Pugi was my Ulpan years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It's a great way to learn Hebrew. So today's conversation is centered around Rabbi Avraham Feinberg or Abraham Feinberg. And I was telling you that when I was talking to Hallel, I'm like, these are the perfect people to be having this conversation because he was a Reform rabbi. He was a social justice warrior. And I don't mean that like literally the definition of a social justice advocate. There's so many parallels between what you guys are doing and what he was doing. Actually, before we get into that, can you tell us, Susan, an overview of your origin story, for lack of better term, and how we got here? I mean, when Hallel mentioned Women of the Wall, I'm like, of course. I remember watching the Facebook Lives. You're in the world of Jewish social justice community, you guys are up. Can you tell us how we got here?
So, start way before Women of the Wall. And just by the way, I love Women of the Wall and I'm on the board, but I don't attend anymore because it really took me 2 days to get over it. Going on Rosh Chodesh morning and then the next 2 days, couldn't even get work done. I can't miss 2 days of work a month, like,
Yeah.
because of
Did
my like fury, just the fury when I would leave there each time. And so I'm involved, like just being on the board and trying to help, but I don't attend anymore.
you're not going to the services? When you say the fury, you mean you were revved up and angry about the responses, or you were revved up
Yes.
and passionate about how great it was?
No, furious at just the people throwing things at us, yelling at us, whistling at us, like as if this sense, like it's just like it's one of the worst things about Israel, right? Is that kind of like avodah zarah, honestly, that kind of like
Idol
idol
worship.
worship, where like people know, they believe they know in their head what God wants and what God does not want. And that total utter lack of humility, and that treating God as if God is something that you can maybe not hold in your hand, but you can hold it in your mind, which is the same thing. It's an idol.
Right.
It's
It's
cultish
condensing
behavior.
God to what fits into
Yeah.
our brains.
It's
And
cultish behavior.
and the
Yeah.
and it's infuriating, but I love them, and I admire these women who go there every month and have for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Like it's just incredible, and seeing how it's grown and evolved, and seeing the Southern Wall evolve more also, which is a result of the work of Women of the Wall, which is an egalitarian section, which of course the people who aren't egalitarian have to show up and do terrible things for some reason. Like,
It's insane.
so yeah, I just feel like, yeah, that was just really, it just undermined me so much that it wasn't worth it anymore. But I grew up in a family that was very social justice oriented. We were one of very few Jews in New Hampshire, you know, and I thought growing up that being Jewish meant you were a Democrat and being Christian meant you were a Republican. Because we were secular, and I just knew like the Jews I knew were all Democrats, and everyone else was a Republican pretty much. So I just remember them getting raised like with this music, with like Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar and Pearly and all these musicals that had like justice at their core. And it was the first time that I realized like there could be a connection between a relationship with God and community and social justice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like I was so moved by that. It was Christian stuff, right? Because it was, the musicals were Godspell, whatever. But I was just like, oh wow, I love that. I love this idea of being in a relationship with God and singing about social justice.
Right. One of the things that I look and sort of am fascinated by in the Avraham Feinberg story is he was, first of all, he was a member of the Black Panthers, right? He was looking at civil rights holistically, not just Jewish civil rights. He was looking at civil rights. He was an early adopter of clergy welcoming in LGBT community into Jewish life, women's rights, reproductive rights. Like really, I mean, he's hitting these points. But then 1967 shows up and the PLO becomes a thing, and the Black Panthers, as Rabbi Feinberg puts it, the Black Panthers get duped into advocating for the PLO, and Rabbi Feinberg says to them, guys, these are terrorists who are out here to hurt Jews. And he didn't even get a response to his letter and was never able to get back into the group. They essentially excommunicated him. And I find that a really relatable story. I think if I would have read that story in 2022 or before October 7th of 23, I would have been like, oh, that's awful. That sounds terrible. And today I read that story and I go, I know exactly what he's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Rabbi, you stick in Israel, but Hallel, you're traveling the world and you're talking in the civil rights, you're advocating, you're talking to people all over the world. Can you talk about how relevant that is or how relatable that is to your world, and what was your experience like and how did that work?
Yeah. So my mind started racing as you were talking about the Black Panthers, and it is so relatable right now. I mean, we see what happened that summer with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, not being able to condemn Hamas, not being able, becoming very anti-Israel as an official stance of Black Lives Matter. It's really a repeat of history if you look at it. So that's immediately what I thought of. If you read it in 2022, it looks like an identical story that we see today. Um, Civil rights, like liberal issues being hijacked against Israel.
Yeah. What was your personal experience with the communities that you're advocating for, the people that you have relationships with? Did they turn their back on you, or were you able to keep those bridges?
I think for the most part, I've kept my bridges, which is really a blessing. I mean, also growing up in Israel, a lot of my work is in the US, and I do work in the left. I educate on the intersection of liberalism and Zionism, but for the most part, I've actually been able to keep my relationships. And even if you disagree, it's in a very, I come at it from a very open Israeli way. We can disagree and have a discussion. I think that's lacking in North America a lot, especially on
Interesting.
campuses.
You
Sorry.
just mentioned the intersection of liberalism and Zionism. Rabbi Feinberg has a famous quote where he talks about Reform Judaism as a catalyst to changing the world. And,
Love
you know, I look at that, and I my social media feed is strange because I play in a lot of sandboxes, and in one of those sandboxes, I see people who say Reform Judaism was great and all and nice and all, but we can't tikkun olam ourselves into oblivion. And the idea of tikkun olam is wonderful when the world is at peace and we're physically safe and we have luxury, and Jews in America pre-2023 felt safe and comfortable and everything was good, and so we can work on repairing the world through our privilege. Today we're at wartime and we need self-preservation. Take your tikkun olam and shove it,
Why can't we do both?
What's that?
Why can't we do both? Sorry to interrupt, but why
So
can't
talk
we
about
do
that.
both?
Talk about that.
I mean, why can't you work every day to make the world better and care about your own safety and security? Are we not able to multitask anymore? Like, why can't we hold two truths? Right? I like saying we're not anti-Israel activists. We can hold more than one truth at once. We can hold more than one belief. They can go hand in hand, making yourself better and safe and making others better. But I was also raised by Rabbi Susan, and so I'm very brainwashed towards this stuff.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. You have done a good job. Rabbi, what would you say to somebody who's looking at the ideas of tikkun olam and saying and this, I get accused of this all the time, and I can send you a screenshot. Hallel, you'll laugh at them. People are like, "You have no self-preservation instinct. You're a bad Jew," and I'm like, what do you talk? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, my response is pretty easy. My kids all serve in the IDF. Like that's self-preservation, right? I mean, that's fighting for the Jewish state. That's not, like diaspora thinking or whatever people would say about that. I mean, I'm not saying like what other people,
I love you.
Yeah.
Other people say. But I agree with Hallel because she's very wise. But also, I think that Jewishly, for a long time, we were sort of ghettoized, right? I mean, there have been times in history where we've been more part of a mainstream society wherever we've lived, but we're largely a lot of ghettoizing. And when we're ghettoized, what that means is that we have to make small things into big things, right? Because if our world is tiny, right, then we don't have control over much in the world. We can control like halakha, and how we do minute things because we don't have like the power to actualize the profits, right? In any kind of big way. And then I think we came to like more free societies, to freer societies, where then Judaism, like for liberal Judaism, became all tikkun olam. And I think both are problematic, right? We don't want to be so tiny that like I remember when the rabbinute here went crazy because the barekas had to be different shapes because the meat barekas, what if they were the same shape as the potato barekas? And then someone ate the meat barekas with milk, and they were doing this at the same time that our fucking government was planning the mass deportation of African asylum seekers on Pesach, by the way. They were planning it for Pesach because geniuses.
It's crazy.
So I lost it. Like we in Israel and I think in America and Western countries overall so far, Jews have been able to be in both realms, right? And I think outside of Israel, we went kind of a little crazy with like Tikkun Olam becoming Judaism, where I think we need the forest and the trees. And here, I think we're in segments, right? Where there are some Israeli Jews who are like hyper halachic and some who are sort of like, wait, was Jesus a Jewish prophet? Like totally clueless about anything actually Jewish. But that we have the opportunity here to really bring those things together and to use that to let that the halakha piece, the traditional piece, the Jewish piece be our roots and let the branches be prophetic, right? And I think we have the opportunity here. And some of that's going to mean internal stuff. The terrorist settlers, that's on us. And as a country, we can't let that happen. And that's not just like woo-woo tikkun olam. That's very basic Jewish state.
Yeah.
Right. I want to clarify. When you say terrorist settlers, you're not saying that all settlers are terrorists. You're saying settlers who do bad things and act in and do terrorist activities. Those are
That's right.
Jewish Israelis who are terrorists who are doing bad things. That doesn't mean that being a settler is terrorism.
No, of course, but
it's not at all.
Jewish terrorists come from settlements, but not all settlements are Jewish terrorists, of course.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. But I'm a two-state solution person, but no, not by a long stretch. A lot of people are just people living there, and perfectly good, solid people. But the ones who are, and I'm on WhatsApp of, there are a lot of Jewish Israelis who are living in Palestinian villages in the West Bank to help protect those, the Palestinians from the settlers. And so I'm, on a WhatsApp group of someone who's been doing that for months and months and months of like the settlers and the kind of things that they're doing. So we need to be able to look internally and say, what are we doing? And we should express our shame around that because I think it's a way to model it also. Like when people are associated with groups who do have terrorists, which I think is pretty much every ethnic group on some level, right, has like really bad people in it, that we need to be able to model shame and action.
Yeah.
We're way out of the scope of what I thought we were going to be talking about today, but we're here and let's do this. Do you have concern that when we acknowledge and say, hey, these are bad people who are doing bad things and they're in our camp, that empowers our enemies? And this is sort of how we had this conversation about Slam Frank, right? Like there's this satire, it's empowering our enemies. It should be done and it's the right thing to do. But when we're doing the right thing and empowering our enemies against us, how do we
I think when we don't acknowledge our faults, we lose all credibility where we are right and we are correct and we are on the right side. If we don't call out our own extremists and our own terrorists and our own wrongdoers within our camp, how could we be taken seriously when we're saying, no, but we're doing this, that's also good? It kills all credibility if we don't acknowledge.
Do we need to have caveats in there? I don't know the answer to this.
No.
Like, how do you do that? How do you say like?
So I'm different from Hallel in this way. Like, I think she's right. And I think it is important to call all this out. I do find it hard to do. I find it hard because I do feel like, oh God, this is going to be used as like, oh, well, this is Israel. Look, even an Israeli is saying that this is Israel. And that's really hard. But I think that's my problem. But
right,
it's
so
not,
that's where the caveats come.
I think it's what the right thing to do is.
Interesting. How do you think somebody like Rabbi Feinberg would have answered that question, knowing what you know about him? Like, how would he have called out? I don't want to say the word settler terrorist because that is an offensive term to me, right? I just said it, but like that's an offensive, but it's not settlers terrorists. That's not how I see them. I have friends who live in settlements in
I have friends that live in settlements.
No, I don't see settlers as people in settlements as terrorists. Right. I'm saying, but settler terrorists. Which is a small subset.
Jewish terrorists tend to come from settlements, not settlements. Right. Jewish settlers aren't all terrorists.
Right.
But
Right.
there is a correlation of
100%. And I
extremism.
don't want anyone to think that I'm saying
I
that.
actually use Jewish terrorist, Mom, instead of solar terrorist. I
Oh,
say
that's
Jewish.
Jesus.
Yeah.
No,
Jewish
Jewish
terror.
terrorism.
Yeah,
Like, it is.
no, I
But
get it.
we have among us. That's on us. Like when
Yeah.
people be like, "Oh, Baruch Goldstein, he killed all those Muslims," and I don't even consider him Jewish, but it was Jewish,
Yeah.
Right.
right? Like, and we can't say, "Well, he doesn't really count as a Jew." He does. We might say
Yeah.
he's a terrible Jew, but we have to own what's real.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Rabbi Feinberg would agree with us. I think he'd agree that you have to call it out, right? If he did all this work to better all these communities.
And I admire that he left the Black Panthers, like, because I feel like you can get so into a community or a group of people that you were like, it's really meaningful to be part of. And I think that's one thing that's really hard for Jews in America who are on the left, who just want to be accepted. So I really admire that he like stood out for racial justice and for LGBT justice and all of it. And that he didn't say, "Oh, well, I want to be like one of the good Jews," right?
Yeah.
He said, "No, that's fucked up. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call you on that too."
So let's talk about Reform Judaism. And, Reform Judaism started off anti-Zionist. And actually, Rabbi Susan, we were talking about Temple Israel. Temple Israel here in Detroit, which is, for those of you who want to connect some dots, we like playing Jewish geography here. The recording of the show that's in the beginning of this podcast is from the Storied live event that we did at Temple Israel. So Temple Israel was one of the first Reform synagogues that were like, wait a second, we're not anti-Zionists, we're Zionist. Like, we need to focus on Zionism and really, and I think part of that is also, there's a difference between when we say we're all Zionists, right? And Zionist in that context is referring to the belief that Jews have the right to self-determination, our indigenous homeland, versus when Reform Judaism or Satmar said we're anti-Zionist, they were talking about the political movement and there's a difference between ideology and politics, and that's where those two get conflated because they're using the same word. But we're talking about, Rabbi Feinberg being Reform Judaism being this sort of space to change and space to reform, space to really, adapt Jewish life into modern times in a really tangible and a relatable way. And that's where we find him talking about LGBTQ rights. That's where we find him talking about women's rights and reproductive rights and these issues that today you almost, if you're not advocate, you're almost like, what are you talking about? Like, this is common sense. And I think that our children are going to look at us and be like, there were advocates. You know what I think of when I, as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, heard my mother talking about civil rights activists, talking about like, Black people should have voting rights and women should have voting rights and we shouldn't have separate bathrooms and water fountains. And I was like, people actually argued with that. Like, people were like, there was somebody who was able to show their face and say, you shouldn't have the same water fountain. Like, it seemed like such a foreign concept. And today, like, the idea of reproductive rights and women's rights and like these things almost seem like a no-brainer, and yet there's still something that need to be talked about and advocated for. I'm not sure where my question was going there. It feels like more of a statement, like this is where he was and this is what he was doing, and now we're carrying the torch. I guess my question is, how do you feel that torch carrying is going, and where do you think the next steps of that are going to be?
In terms of like American political issues, or in terms of like our voice and all of that?
Yes. Both. Like,
I mean, it's astonishing to me that we are still grappling with some of these same issues. I mean, especially reproductive rights. It's just astonishing to me that this is still a conversation. something that's a very private thing that's about a woman's body, what's happening inside her body, that's a conversation. I mean, I remember as a kid before Roe v. Wade, right before 72, my mom, and she still had it, like we found all her when she passed away, we were looking through all her stuff and her buttons, and it says, get your laws off my body. That's pre-Roe. Our
Mm-hmm.
mom, like our parents both were just, even like LGBT stuff, like when I was a kid, my parents would teach us, like, why the hell do people care to like try to stop people from being gay? Like my parents were like, it's absurd. People should do what they want to do and love what they want to love. And even before it was like, an issue across the states.
May I share a funny family anecdote and stories?
Yes.
So, my mother, as I mentioned to her, my mother was a civil rights activist. She was at Ohio State University in the late '60s and very active. In fact, when we're not recording, we should play some Jewish civil rights activist geography, because I'm sure that there's some dots that can be connected there. My father in the '90s believed that the best thing that could have happened to the United States was that Rush Limbaugh be elected president. And he was like staunch about that, and very confusing Friday night dinners, during those, during Bill Clinton, very, very diametrically opposed viewpoints on that. But it really was a beautiful love story where they didn't see eye to eye on those issues, but they loved each other, and that was their story.
It's fascinating.
When we were, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years old, we drove from Detroit to New York for something. And now again, my dad was an Orthodox rabbi. My mom was the Rebbitzin. She was very modest, despite her left-leaning viewpoints on the world. And we drove to New York for a bar mitzvah or something, and we were driving through the city and not realizing that we were driving into the gay pride parade. And my mother like jumped out of the car and was like, screaming, and hooting and hollering, and like took off her bra and was like waving it like a lasso. And my dad was mortified. And then all of a sudden the leather freaks start walking by, and all of a sudden her eyes got like it went from like glitter and rainbows to leather. And she was like, oh, I don't know anything about this, and like got back in the car, and she was like, close your eyes, kids. And we were it was a lot. It was very, very funny. We were like just eyes wide open. We were like, oh my God, what is happening? It was a lot. It was very funny.
That's great.
We were stuck there for a while. So
your Orthodox rabbi dad's, the Rebbitzin jumps out and pulls your bra off and starts
literally like a lasso. She's like
like
waving it over her head. Yeah, it was great. Good times.
So funny.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the other advocacy that you've done? I know that you wrote a book. I'm looking down because I want to name the book correctly. It's Casting Lots, Creating a Family in a Beautiful Broken World. And you're an advocate for adoption. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, how you got there? I know you've adopted kids, and so you've got an interesting family. Can you talk a little bit about
Wait, I'm
that?
adopted?
For everybody who's not watching on YouTube and listening on audio, we're all laughing because Hallel is just finding out that she's adopted.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that fostered kids. So I had foster sisters over a number of years. And so it was very much like a very personal thing, and seeing these kids who didn't have a stable family, didn't have that kind of rootedness. And it was astonishing to me. And so I grew up just always with that very deep in me, and knew that someday when I, got married, had kids, that it would be at least in part through adoption. And that's what it was. And because I'm a rabbi and I understand the power of community, I created an organization almost 10 years ago now called Second Nurture. And Second Nurture partners with synagogues mostly, although some other communities as well. And help and trains that synagogue to become wraparound support for local foster families. So the foster families are mostly not Jewish and come to the synagogue monthly for like a support group, bring their kids, and we have kid activities, supervised kids programming. And then we train also a family support specialist from that community to facilitate a support group among the parents who foster parents feel very isolated often. And they just don't feel like they're in spaces where there aren't other foster parents or few, and they're overwhelmed with all the things that they need to do. And so we do this support group once a month, and they help each other out and solve problems like on the spot. But then also when things come up that families need, we advertise that to the synagogue community and say, could someone volunteer in these various ways to support this family, whatever that might mean. So that's, we're now in Detroit, and across the country, lots of cities, but including Detroit.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, we have a very high retention rate on foster families as opposed to about half who quit after a year nationally.
Half of foster families quit after 1 year?
Yeah,
That's the
nearly
national.
half. Yeah,
Wow.
because it's really hard. It's like, these parents, sometimes it's a single parent, sometimes it's a couple, they have full-time jobs and they're raising kids with trauma and having to meet their needs. And then the bureaucracy of fostering is like another full-time job. And
Right.
people it's too much. They can't do it all. They can't maintain it all. And so we're able to get in there and be like, we're like the water between the rocks, whatever you need. And we'll support a foster family's bio kid if they need something for that kid, because that whole family has to be healthy and supported, right? In order for them to be able to continue fostering.
That's amazing.
It's interesting watching mom create this program about a decade ago and really like seeing how it partially come from our blended family growing up in the 90s and early 2000s without other families that looked like us and without a support system. And obviously my brothers are adopted, not fostered, but just having a community that's like your family and how much of a difference that can make. You're pretty cool, Mom.
Yeah.
Thanks, honey. This is recorded.
I know, that's why I'm being nice.
I'm gonna double down on that and say you're pretty cool, Hallel's mom.
Aw.
So let's go back to music for a moment. Hallel, you talked about Israeli music and liking Israeli music, and I'll be honest, since October 7th, I've gotten a lot more into Israeli music and Israeli artists, and found some interesting stuff. I've become a big fan of an Israeli musician by the name of Shaked Miller. I think she's awesome. What are your protest songs? What are the, we're again relating this back to Give Peace a Chance. What are the protest songs that you're hearing both in English and in Hebrew that you're like, yes, this is powerful. This is going to change the world?
I love that you asked that. I mean, there's so many answers. Everything from, classics of like Omer Adam and Yasmin Moalem, Tuna. But I actually just produced a music video for this new song called See the Light. And the hook of it is from the river to the sea, I see the light. And it's really just this empowering anthem of taking something negative and turning it into something beautiful. And that's by artists Adina and Westside Gravy. And I've definitely amped myself up with that as an anthem over the last few months since it was released. So everyone check it out. I produced a music video. It's kind of cool.
Is the music video out?
Yeah, it came out recently. We did a whole premiere in Israel. There's like a lot of like soldiers in it. And we have a Shai Klein, a Nova survivor friend of mine, Andrei Kozlov, the rescued hostage.
Sure.
And then a lot of like TikTokers and activists and faces that are kind of doing different parts of this battle, whether it's on the front lines online or in the IDF. And it's a very beautiful, moving.
Well, I'm going to put the link to the video in the show notes so that anybody who's listening to this can just click and find it and go check it out. Please.
I think
Please,
really
I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. Rabbi, what's your answer to the question? What are the protest songs that you're passionate about that get you going today?
I kind of know chants, but not protest songs. But I love Israeli music. So much Israeli music is really peace oriented, and what like stuck in my mind, what came to my mind when you were asking this question is Hatikva, singing Hatikva. And that I love that our national anthem isn't like bombs bursting in air. It's not any of that. It's just about longing, right? It's about longing and home. And it's not about defeating anybody else. It's not about winning a war. It's not about anything like that. It's just about 2,000 years of longing being finally fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I just find that so, so beautiful. And like all of the protesting over, not just since the war. I mean, I have been involved in like hostage protests, and then I have been involved more recently in Stop the War protests because it was the most justified war ever until it wasn't. And as an Israeli, I just felt like, no, okay, now it's time to stop this. But at all the demonstrations, the democracy before the 7th, and since like singing Hatikva at the end.
Yeah. But all sides, both sides of these protests sing Hatikva, and it's so uniquely Israeli and Jewish that whether you're against the judicial reform or for it, you're singing Hatikva. And it's so special that we do that. No matter what you're fighting for on each side, we're singing the same anthem.
It's funny that you say that. I mentioned, negative comments on Instagram, and I get a lot of them, and people often will throw in my face, well, this person's doing this one and that makes them bad, and this person's doing that thing and that makes them bad. And I remind people that like, I can think that somebody's wrong, and this comes up a lot in the conversations about like Jews who voted for Mamdani, and I can think that they're horribly wrong. Not only are they wrong, they're putting Jews in danger, right?
Yes.
But if somebody is doing that because they think that they're expressing their Jewish values in doing so, and I have a level of respect for that, right? Like if somebody says the reason why I'm doing this is I believe that this is a social justice issue and therefore I'm doing that, like I think you're wrong. I might even think that you're an idiot, right? I think that you're harming people. I think that you're misguided, but I appreciate the fact that they're coming at it from a place of, and people don't like that answer from me. Like the as a Jew.
I get that answer. I understand that answer. And at the same time, I think you're kind of brainwashed if you think that voting for Mamdani is good for the Jews. I think you've been manipulated,
No, I don't.
I'm not saying that I believe it. I'm saying that.
No, not you. I mean the other. Like
They've bought a bag of snake oil, and that's unfortunate.
It's really problematic.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that comes from like too much assimilation and like white passing guilt from being in exile in the West for so many years, that you buy into this like movement of white passing guilt. It has no place in the Middle East.
I've heard the term white passing, and I've heard the term white guilt. I've never heard the term white passing guilt. That's
you heard it here first, folks. It's exactly what it sounds like.
So can you explain for those who don't know what Jews being white passing or American Jews being white passing is?
So, I mean, I've made videos about this online a lot about like I could look white, but millions of my people were killed for not being white. So I can acknowledge white passing privilege, especially traveling in the West, until someone finds out I'm Jewish, right? Because then they hate you. So I think Jews that have been in America for too long or in the West too long and have over assimilated, right? A lot of people assimilated decades ago for survival. And I think it got to a level where they actually started feeling white guilt along with actual white people. So white passing guilt. And it has no place in Judaism. It has no place in Israel. It doesn't help.
I'd like to just expand on your explanation a little bit, if I may. So, racism against people who are Black or people who are brown is something that they live with and they can't really get away from. You and I can walk down the street and tuck our Maga Davids into our shirt, and people will assume, people won't necessarily say, oh, there's a Jew, right? We can
hide in plain sight.
We can hide in plain sight. Right. And so there's a white passing, but then in conversation, oh, you're Jewish, oh, you're Zionist, and that white that ability to like blend in, if and when, is where the term white passing comes from. And really the idea that Jews are white is an American phenomenon, because in America, 95 or 90% of Jews are, again, white passing. In everywhere else in the world, white Jews are a minority. And
Yeah.
that's
And also North America has this weird obsession with skin pigmentation being directly correlated with race. That is a North American creepy obsession. That's not how things work in the rest of the world. You can see like Lebanese people that are just as white passing as me. I had Tamimi looks just as white passing as me. Like this is a North American obsession that your skin pigmentation is your ethnicity.
right.
It's not how the rest of the world works. And North
Right.
America is not the center of the world, even if they think they are.
We're
So-
pretty convinced that we are.
Yeah, I know. I'm
So-
visiting right now and I'm terrified of it. So
Right.
I zoom out in that. So white passing privilege, 100%, but they've over assimilated. A lot of people have over assimilated and their white passing guilt has no place in this discussion. It doesn't help anyone. And I think that's where a lot of Ashkenazi support from Mamdani comes from. Mom?
Yeah, no, I was going to say your point about identity in that way. It's very interesting. Like we host a lot of groups from abroad, and one of our trips, there was a Black politician. They're often politicians or, government officials. And she and I were having conversation, and somehow it came up where I said, like, yeah, Ethiopian Jews tend to be what Americans call right wing, right? Like,
Mhm.
and she was shocked. And I was fascinated by her shock. Because why? Because of their skin color, would you assume that they vote for liberal things in Israel? These are
It's a North
people
American idea.
from African countries, from Middle Eastern countries who are in Israel, who come with an entirely different worldview
Yeah.
than African Americans have. Like, why?
course.
Because of a skin color that they identify as similar, would you think that Ethiopian Jews, for example, are liberal? It's not
Right.
a
They're
liberal
obsessed with skin
demographic.
color. They're obsessed with skin color.
And I remember thinking, wow, this is so fascinating. Like, this is a really smart woman. It wasn't like a lack of
course.
capacity. It was just
It's wild.
the matching of politics and skin color was absolute.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Richie Torres?
Of course. We love him.
So-
Of course.
Richie Torres had a brilliant podcast, and I don't remember which podcast he was on, but he was talking about how, people will use terminology like Latinx. And he's like, ask somebody who would qualify for Latinx if they consider themselves Latinx. He's like, that's not a term that we would ever use. He's like, and that shocks white liberals who are, trying to come up with a new term. He's like, the idea of like defund the police is great, except in the districts that I represent where the police are necessary. He's like, nobody in my district wants to defund the police. He's like, and coming out and saying that that's a liberal value. He's like, nobody in my district wants to do that. They want to have a police presence that's fair. They want to have a police presence that's equitable. They want to have a police presence that's serve and protect. They don't want to defund the police. They want to adopt.
Reform.
They want to reform. They want to improve. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. I remember thinking like, oh, that makes so much sense. He's like, it's yeah. So I appreciate that
No,
conversation.
I hear that.
So,
Yeah. White liberals like to talk over everybody else. Like, I'm not comfortable with having to say Latino or Latina. So I'm going to insist that you identify as Latino.
It's so wild. It's wild. It's wild.
This idea of comfort. Like, I was on panel one time and for rabbinical students, and this one student said, so I have a question for Rabbi Silverman. So I'm really liberal and I have very extreme views, as my community knows. So I just want to know, like, when I'm a congregational rabbi, how can I be comfortable? And I was like, be uncomfortable.
Thank
I
you.
won't fucking kill you. Be
Thank
uncomfortable.
you.
Learn something. Maybe you weren't right. maybe there was nuances you hadn't thought of. Like, be uncomfortable.
That's what we were talking about on our live,
Like,
with Slam Frank.
things to be comfortable. No, like, microaggressions. What? Like,
Be uncomfortable. It won't
be
fucking kill you.
uncomfortable. Like, the idea that, like, that there are some people who are like, I need the self-actualization at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't care if, like, there are people at the bottom who don't have the food and stability they need. I need to be self-actualized up here, and we all have to focus on that right now.
Wild.
And I just feel like, no, the world doesn't look like that. Like, no.
Right. People who are
That's not
hungry
that.
don't care about your self-actualization. First of all, Rabbi, I love you. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that or allowed to say
Well,
that,
thank
but
you. No, it's great. I appreciate it.
I love you too, Mother.
Oh, I like you, honey.
Fuck you.
That was so rude.
Hallel, at least you got a response. I just got to thank you. So
I know. It's true. Wait, Benji, you see where I come from? Do you understand, like, what I was yelling about, like, when we did our lives? Like, this is my mother. Like,
That's so funny.
I was
No, I
preaching
said,
that
you
people have
said
to be
love you
uncomfortable.
too. I said you're too. Yeah.
So let's talk about be
Okay,
uncomfortable. And this is a topic that is highly controversial today and very in the moment. So there's a off-Broadway production called Slam Frank, and it's a Latin transgender version of
Latin
the
pansexual. Is it
sorry,
Latin pansexual Anne Frank?
Latin
With a black
pansexual
mom and a
and
gay dad. Black mom, gay dad. It's phenomenal. It blew my mind. I went in there expecting to, I hated the idea of it, which is why I went to see it. And I walked out like that was brilliant. It triggered every bone in my body. I was so uncomfortable and it was brilliant.
right.
And so
So
we spoke about that ago. Like,
yeah, so we talked about this on Instagram Live last week, and my brain says I appreciate this as satire. My gut says I fucking hate this. Stop
yeah,
it.
same.
And we were
Oh, I'm
talking about this
so honest.
earlier. I think that there's a clear distinction between people who have seen it and understand the satire and people who haven't seen it and saw clips and were like, you're making fun of Anne Frank. And the answer is they're not
They're
making fun
not.
of Anne Frank.
They're not at all. They're
They're
making fun
making fun
of the
they're
world right now.
right. They're
Yeah.
making fun of the progressive far left that has fallen
Lost
off
the
of
plot
its wrapper.
entirely.
Yeah.
And it's, as you said, like most bad reviews came from people that did not see the play, that did not see the musical. And most positive reviews are from people that saw it. I went with a Nova survivor friend, with an IDF, like, reservist friend in combat. I went, and we all loved it. Like, how can you write about something you haven't seen? You hate the idea of it. It's like coming to Israel, or it's like saying you hate Israel and not coming to see us.
Right.
You have to come see something for yourself before you have such a strong opinion about it.
Right. The biggest criticism, which I still appreciate, is that the people who don't understand that it's satire can use this against us, right? And sort
Who
of
doesn't understand it's satire?
a lot of people.
I can't give things away, but if you
read
then,
the comments on their Instagram. Read the comments on their Instagram.
No, but that's the Instagram account. The Instagram account has a life of its own, and every video is satire and whatever. But you cannot possibly sit through those 2 hours. Like, I can't give examples. Hi, Katie, the publicist of Slam Frank. If you're watching this, I won't give anything away as promised as I talk about it, which is really hard to give examples. You cannot sit through that and not know it's satire. Not through the whole 2 hours. Instagram maybe, but there is no way. And it creates this discussion. At the very least, it creates discussion about it. And then maybe people that wouldn't deal with something that's uncomfortable have to fucking talk about it. So at the very least, it creates an important conversation of holding up that mirror to wokeism right now.
Right.
And it was brilliant. Triggering, brilliant.
I love the fact that you guys are such proud liberal civil rights activists and saying the far left has lost the plot, and and are just.
But I'm not going to leave my community on the left. That's where I live. We live on the left. I'll fight for our rightful spot in it. I think I mentioned to you, Benji, on our live, like, my dad's dad was part of the civil rights movement. He was in Mississippi. He was in a lot of, like, I grew up with liberalism and civil rights and Zionism all going hand in hand. And wild to me that it's been manipulated to most of the West that doesn't make sense together.
Right.
It's like wild. So you have to be able to call out your own, just like we talked about Jewish terrorism and all of that. You have to call out your own faults on the left. Doesn't mean I'm going to leave the left, but I'll fight from within it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mom, are you proud of me?
So proud of you, baby. So proud.
I'm proud of you too, Hallel. All right. So I finish podcast episodes with guests asking a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask the question and want answers from both of you. So the origin of this is this podcast, this whole series, was my dad, who used to say that the biggest threat to Jewish continuity is the idea that people have Holocaust education as their primary focus of Jewish identity, and the Yiddish expression "Schwel zu sein Yid," because if the only message that our kids hear is it's hard to be Jewish and then they're coming for us, why would they stick around? So I look at this as we're both fighting anti-Semitism and we're educating and empowering Jewish pride. That's why I wear the shirt. Empowered Jews, right? We're empowering Jewish pride and Jewish continuity in having these joyful conversations and sparking Jewish joy. So we talk about the collaboration and contribution of the Jewish community. So when you hear the words contribution and collaboration, where in the music, social, in your worlds, where do you find the great Jewish collaborations and contributions today? Why don't you answer that first, Rabbi?
Sure. So when I think about collaboration, actually what comes to mind is other people's right now refusal to collaborate with us. Right. That, you know, there have been like major environmental movements have said like, no, we're not letting the Jews in, or not letting the Jewish organizations in, or we're not whatever. And I look at that and I think, wow, so what you're saying is, and this giant threat to humanity is actually less important than not like, than working with Jews. Like not working with Jews is more important to you than not letting the world end. Like it's just insanity. And this that I feel like we need to be able to work together on things we agree on, even if we don't agree on the other pieces of it. Right. And so I think the Zionist movement is super cool. Like that they're like, we are liberals and we're in the liberal space and we're going to do our liberal work. And if you want to ignore us, ignore us. If you want to kick us out, kick us out. But we're going to keep going and keep working on these things that we're working on as Jews. And we happen to be Zionists. And that's how it is. And I think.
Did you call it the Zionist movement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Zionists?
I don't.
They're cool.
Yeah. Look them up. Very cool. And I think that's really important. It's sort of fuck you. We're liberals. Like, and people say, how can you still be a Democrat? How can you? And I'm like, where am I going to go? Like, am I going to choose a party that doesn't support reproductive rights for women, that doesn't like believe in a safety net for everybody, for healthcare and for food and for housing? Like those things aren't suddenly not important, but I am sort of homeless because there isn't like as much collaboration out there for us, at least in the States. And I even had my work, I won't say which state this was in, but I came into a meeting that was social workers from that county, and they were almost all Black and not Jewish. And when the person introduced me, said, oh, here's Susan. She's from Israel and she's doing this wonderful work here. And they just all went silent and stone-faced. And my heart just sank. And the person introduced me goes, show her some love. And so everybody kind of put hearts, and it was Zoom like on their things. But it took this like, and I was also African-American and Christian, like saying, you're going to welcome her and say hello. But it was something when they said I was from Israel that all of a sudden, and I don't think anybody there knows Israel, Of course.
Right. That's a sad but beautiful answer. Hallel?
Yeah. So I took the question in a different direction. I mean, I loved your answer, Mom, obviously. Brilliant, as always. Not just pretty. And
but mostly pretty.
Mostly pretty. But I actually thought about it more in my own world of activists and content creators and like Jewish pride online. And I've always explained, I mean, I've been online for like over a decade doing this work, and I see it as one big mechanism. And it works if we all do our part. I can do my part as a liberal Zionist activist and creator in Israel. American Jews in the diaspora or exile, whatever you want to call it, can do their job of being proud Jews and empowering other Jews around them to be proud Jews. But sometimes people cross into other people's lanes where maybe an American influencer thinks they should get involved with Israeli politics versus sticking to collaborating with those around them and contributing in the way that they should contribute in the greater mechanism. And I kind of wish that we work together a little bit more, because they're not always working together.
Well, it sounds like in both answers, we have some work to do and some room for improvement.
Mhm. For sure.
So
Yes.
I loved when you use the term homeless. I talk about being a politically
Yeah.
homeless, where,
I think a lot of
you
people
know,
are.
I would love to be, you know, liberal and Democrat and like be a part of that community, which I've been for 25 years, except it's not safe for my children. And that's not because they're females, and it's not, it's for no other reason than because they're Jewish. And that's a
Right,
problem. I don't feel at home on the right either, because there's a lot of values there that I do respect and appreciate, and a lot of values there that I don't respect and appreciate. And I've sort of leaned into being a centrist and saying, I'm a stubborn centrist. Somebody called me, like, I will not allow extremism or fundamentalism to take over, because I have some real liberal values, and I have some conservative values, and I have some really, clear, let's call this a liberal value. I believe in bigger tents with bigger doors and bigger tables. And that means that the liberal Jews have a seat at the table. And that also means that the conservative Jews have a seat at the table. And that means that people who think differently than me have a seat at the table. And, there's this, again, going back to social media, like the people talking about like, oh, that person's not Jewish enough, or that person's Erev Rav, or then they're like, well, you're an atheist, you don't even get to talk about Judaism. And I'm like,
not how that works.
That's not how that works. That's just not how that works. And, it's okay for us to have a disagreement and still be at the same table, and
we're
even if we say,
we're Jews.
Yeah. And even if you say, hey, I don't want to be at the same table as you, right? Tupac said, it's not that I don't want you to eat, it's that I don't want you to eat at my table, right? We can be in the same tent and not eat at the same table. And that's okay. Like the idea that we just have to be so far apart on all these issues is crazy to me. So the second half of the question is, or the part two of the question is revolving around Jewish joy. So I believe the solution is finding that Jewish joy and focusing on the positive stuff. So when I say the words Jewish joy, what's that spark in you? What's that? What is Jewish joy in your world?
So I want to say, first of all, that my husband is very much like your dad, and that when we lived in the States and the kids were in Jewish day school, he would take them out on Holocaust Remembrance Day, because he was like, they're too young and I don't want them associating this with being Jewish. And he would take you out for ice cream Sundays and talk about what was it?
Jewish magic.
Yeah. Just like
miracles and
Judaism.
our strength.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it.
Fascinating. So Jewish joy, I relate to what you said, but I think about it a little bit differently. So, and you might have said this kind of, just as a way to get the idea across, this idea of a solution being Jewish joy. I don't think it's a solution. I think it's a way to be in the world that is going to uplift us. Even when in the hard times come. I don't think it's going to fix anything, but I do think that it's really, really important and that's how we raise our kids, with this joy around what it means to be Jewish and what it is to be Jewish. And I love that. I love Jewish joy, and I think the world hates Jewish joy for some reason.
People love dead Jews, right?
Everybody loves dead Jews.
Yeah.
And they hate it when they won't die for their sins. No.
But what are the Jewish joy moments in your, is Friday night dinner the Jewish joy? Is Havdalah the Jewish
Shabbat
joy?
for
Is
sure. Shabbat, like our house is just overflowing every Shabbat, and I just love that. And it's so many different kinds of people that are here, and it's so fascinating. I mean, really, when you're here, you have to come to us for Shabbat, and you'll see it's like
deal.
our table is such a variety of people. And I really just enjoy that and the brachot. And I love our shul. And I know I'm a rabbi, but I'm not a big tefillah person. But I love it at our shul. And I love just the utter joy in those moments of being together and singing. And we also are pretty similar politically. So it's like, it's just a home.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's branding.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I
Hallel?
love everything Mom said. I spend at least maybe a Shabbat a month. I go home to be with them from Tel Aviv, which is really, really nice. Just have the community and my siblings, my parents. And I mean, something like even throughout these last 2 years, which are the worst of our lives, and the scariest and darkest, there were moments of simcha, right? A friend's wedding, a bar mitzvah. There were certain moments that still embodied Jewish joy. And I think that helped me throughout those years as well. Having those moments.
I love it. I love it. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm really excited that we got to have this conversation today. Much less Beatles content than in any other podcast episode, but I think that this is an important conversation, and I'm grateful that you guys are here to really exemplify. Is that the right word that I'm looking for? Exemplified the ethos of what Rabbi Feinberg was doing and thinking and advocating for and pushing, and the way that he tried to change the world, and we're just following in his footsteps, and I'm really grateful for that. And
I'm a fan.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to press stop, and thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. You're wonderful.
Thank you. That's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps the algorithm show other people this podcast. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, again, reach out. We would love to talk to you. And make sure you check out the show notes for the links to our socials and our sponsors. This show was produced by Ryan Storm from This Is Storm Sound. Editing done by Andrea Rizzuto. Production management done by Eric Nelson. Booking by Leanne Deutsch of 16 Mile Talent. Design work done by Tessa Hewitt. Research done by Avishai Bauman. Now, the music you heard is recorded by Evan Sherman, but was actually written by my late father, Rabbi Benji Rosenzweig, as the original opening of the song that he wrote for the diaspora yeshiva band called Pit Huli. I'm your host and storyteller, Benji Rosenzweig, and this has been another episode of Storied, the untold Jewish stories behind your favorite music, Season 1, The Beatles.